Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. My name is Michelle Zellner, your host. I am joined today by my fabulous side host, Sasha. How are you, darling?
Hi, everyone. Hi.
I can't tell you how happy I am that you are here for this conversation. Honestly, I can't tell you how excited I am for this particular topic. It's something I've been wanting to talk about probably since we started talking about doing a podcast, because it was such a pivotal, monumental leap forward in my life when I actually not only chose to do this, but then did the hard work to do it. And I know it is something that everybody struggles with. And today we are joined by Dr. Debi Silber, who, I mean, if I could have just plucked out the perfect guest for this, well, I mean, I kind of did. And so, Dr. Debi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so we should probably tell the listeners what we're talking about. We are talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness in kind of all senses, but maybe specifically to something that you really focus on, Dr. Debi. So let's just give the listeners your background and we will get going on the conversation.
Sure. So I've been in business over 30 years, health, mindset, personal development. And then I had a really painful betrayal from my family. Thought I did everything I needed to do to heal from that. And then it happened a few years later. This time it was my husband. Anybody who's been through that, you know how devastating it is. You know the pain, you know the shock. So that was the deal breaker. And I got him out of the house and I looked at the two experiences thinking, well, what's similar to these two? Of course, me, but what else? And I realized boundaries were always getting crossed. I never took my needs seriously. And I'm one of those people that believe, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I decided to enroll in a PhD program. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I didn't know how I was going to manage the time, but like a book wasn't getting me out of this jam. And it was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential, because I was changing so much. I didn't really understand what was happening. He was too, wasn't ready to look at that. And then it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal. What holds us back? What helps us heal? And what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people that we're closest to lie, cheat, and deceive. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life.
And is what brought you here today. And we're going to talk about all things betrayal and forgiveness. Personally, have been through it twice. When the second one happened, I looked back at the first one and was like, oh, that was so cute. Because the second one was like, okay. And, I definitely learned and grew through the first one, but it did not prepare me for what this next one was going to be like. And sad to say, I'm going to guess that every single person listening has been betrayed on some level.
And you know what it is? Until and unless you get the mother of all betrayals, we keep repeating the same thing. Not that it's your fault and that it's your opportunity. There's a profound lesson waiting to be learned. You are lovable, worthy, and deserving. You need better boundaries in place. Whatever it is, until and unless you get that, you're going to have opportunities in the form of people to teach you. So
Yeah.
It sounds like it was with my family, right? The first one, yes, it was bad. The second rocked my world so profoundly that it changed my entire life. That's when life changes. And I'm happy to share the discoveries, and you will see exactly why these repeat betrayals happen. Whatever serves.
Yeah. Sasha, I know you have something to say about this.
Yeah, I am getting goosebumps because I am working with my coach, and this week he let me know, you need to work on these feelings of betrayal and hurt that you've experienced. So my homework this week is to list out those betrayals. When was my first time I ever got hurt or felt like an expectation of mine wasn't met? And why do I have these resentments? Where is that feeling? And so you're kind of, I think, on the show more for me than our listeners. I foresee myself staying on mute a lot just so that I can close my eyes and drop into my heart and really hear what you're going to say, and what I'm thankful for you right now, because everything that you are about to tell me is going to help me heal, help me get through my homework for the week. And so please help me, help our listeners, help us through this betrayal.
Yeah. Happy.
That's why I really, really, really wanted you to join this one.
Yeah. So then let me just share the discoveries, because you will know exactly where you're at and why. So the first discovery was that betrayal is a different type of trauma. Now, I had been through death of a loved one. I'd been through disease, and I was like, betrayal feels different for me. I didn't want to assume it was the same for all my study participants. So I asked them, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said it feels so different. And here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the entire self gets shattered. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust, they're all trashed, right? Like when you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss, life will never be the same. You don't question the relationship. You don't question your ability to trust. You don't question your sanity. With betrayal, you do. So that type of healing needed its own name, which is now called Post Betrayal Transformation, the complete and total rebuild of your life and yourself after an experience with betrayal. That was the first discovery. Want me to go to the second?
Yes.
Okay. The second discovery was that there's actually a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. So we've had over 95,000 people take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. A few things first. The first thing is, we've all heard time heals all wounds. Well, I have the proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. Because there's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago and I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 40 years ago. I can still feel the hate. So we know that when it comes to betrayal, do not count on time. Do not count on a new relationship to heal it. Unless and until you deliberately and intentionally heal it, it will follow you around like a shadow, affecting and infecting every single relationship going forward. And at the end, if you can remind me, I will show you how an unhealed betrayal shows up in your health, your work, your relationships. But every so often, I pull the stats from the quiz to see where people land. You want me to share some?
That would be great.
Okay. These are, so now imagine about every country is represented, men and women, just about every age. Pay attention to these numbers. Ready? Out of 95,000 people, 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. 94% deal with painful triggers. And those triggers can take you right down. If you've had them, you know. The most common physical symptoms, 71% have low energy, 68% have sleep issues, 63% have extreme fatigue. You wake up, you're exhausted, your adrenals have tanked. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, maybe you can't hold food down. Later on, you're emotionally eating, using food for comfort. 45% have a digestive issue, and that could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. The most common mental symptoms, 78% are overwhelmed. 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 68% can't focus, 64% are in shock, 62% can't concentrate. So before we go on even further, imagine that you can't concentrate, you're exhausted, you have a gut issue. Now you first have to go to work. Now you first have to raise your kids. That's not even emotionally. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. You bounce back and forth between those two emotions all day long. 82% are hurt. 80% have anxiety. Just a few more. Here's why I wrote the book Trust Again. 84% have an inability to trust. That killed me. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how. You know the craziest part about all of that? Those numbers, you didn't hear me say one thing, 20%, 30%. These numbers are super high. They're also not from a recent betrayal. This could be from the parent who did something awful when you were a kid. This could be from the girlfriend or boyfriend who broke your heart in high school. So think of this. That person may not know, care, remember. They may not even be alive. And here we are with symptoms now because of that. The good news is you can heal from all of it, which is the third discovery. Happy to share that. But if you have any questions before I do.
Yeah, my question was, how do you heal?
Yeah, that's
Let's hold on that for just a moment, because I want to just touch on a couple of things you said. So I have for a long time said time does not heal all wounds. Hard work through time is what will heal your wound.
exactly.
We don't like to do hard work, right? We like to just put band-aids on things,
Yeah.
right? And that's jumping to the next relationship or walling yourself off from a relationship, right? Or medicating yourself with some alcohol or food or retail therapy, right? We love, love, love a band-aid.
Yeah.
The other thing I have often said is own your emotions or they will own you later.
Mhm.
And again, this kind of goes to the whole band-aid thing, right? Like, oh, I can't be angry or I'm over it when you're really not, right? We're going to pretend we're fine. We're tough. We're strong. I got this. They don't deserve my energy. I'm moving on. If you're angry, be angry and then work through it when that anger is no longer serving you. Because, to all those stats you just mentioned, Dr. Debi, a while ago, I had on Dr. David Clark, who deals with stress-related illness. It's all the same stuff, right? Because when we're in that phase of fight or flight, which protecting ourselves from future harm is fight or flight, all of our body chemistry is out of whack. And then that makes us think, feel, and act differently. And then we have all kinds of physical, mental, and emotional issues.
Exactly. You're so right. And, they're just speaking to some of the things you just mentioned. There were actually 3 groups in the study who did not heal. And excuse me, the first was the group that they had their story. They were sticking with it. They were betrayed and life stunk. And that was the end. That was it. They didn't heal. The second group, this was the group who was numbing, avoiding, distracting. They ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer, anti-anxiety med. They started emotionally eating, drinking. It may have made the day a bit easier to get through, not without a price. They didn't heal. The third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. So whether it was out of not wanting to break up a family, fear of change, financial fear, religious reasons, that was a big one. They did everything they could to turn the other cheek, look the other way. I saw 2 things with this group. Number 1, a further deterioration of the relationship. And 2, this was the group that was the most physically sick. Your broken heart can't handle that. But people are so afraid of that complete and utter death and destruction of the old. But that's the only way you birth the new. And just to close the loop on my story, rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move on, that's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something from the ground up new with the person who hurt you. That's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as 2 completely transformed people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids as our bridal party. Never in a bazillion years would I have done that if I wasn't completely transformed, and for sure if he wasn't either. Betrayal will show you who someone truly is. It also has the opportunity to wake them up to who they temporarily became. Then you have something to work with if you want to. You don't have to, but the possibility is there. Anyway, happy to get to the third discovery if you want to hear it.
Yeah, well, I want to just, for a lot of listeners, they know a little bit of my story, but I want to fill in a little bit of gap of my own story. And, as we all know, Sasha is 15 years younger than me. So I think about my 35-year-old self. And then I go back to that 26-year-old self who got the phone call from a girl telling me that she and my fiance's child would be turning 1 next month. And she just thought I should know that before I married him. So at 26, this was the mother of all betrayals, right? At that point in my life, this was it. And I had 2 choices. I could stay or I could go. Those were the choices, right? That week of making that decision was one of the best and worst weeks of my entire life, because we talked about all the things and what does this look like and how does this work? And here's what I need from you, right? If this is going to work. Oh, yeah. I'll do it all. Great. Okay. Well, here's the thing. I can't be here I need to go and get some TLC. And I can't get that from the person who's betrayed me. Like that
Mhm.
isn't going to work for me right now. So in the meantime, I go home to mom and dad. Here I am. I thought I had my whole life figured out. And now I'm this big loser, 26, right? Should be getting married, starting my life, great career. And now I have nothing. So it shatters every single piece of you, who you were, who you are, who you thought you were, what you thought you had, what you thought your future was.
Mhm.
You have nothing at this point except who you are at the core. So, in this brief time that I was at home with mom and dad and having this separation, and then also seeing that he was a lot of talk, no action, no follow through on all the things he said, yeah, yeah, I'm on board to make this work, no follow through. And it was at that point that I said, you know what, I am better than this, and I want better than this. And so that was the first big transformation for me. Because as then at that point, I look back, I saw, oh, there was this girl in school who betrayed me, right? There was this other situation that I felt betrayed by. But they were all just these little life things, right? But it was because I didn't learn and grow from those little life things that I got into this big life thing. And so for me at 26, that was like, I really believe that first time in my life that I stood up for me and said, oh no, I do deserve better. I want more. I want better. And I'm the only one that can give that to myself.
Exactly. And that's the opportunity. And, it reminds me of, I did 2 TEDx talks. One is, do you have post betrayal syndrome? And I talk in that talk about, I give this analogy of a house. And here's the difference between resilience and transformation, trauma and transformation. If you like, imagine this beat up old house, and let's say it needs a new roof, and you get a new roof, that would be resilience, right? You're restoring it, you're bringing it back. Let's say it needs a paint job and you paint, that would be resilience. Here's trauma and transformation. A tornado comes and levels the house. Like a new roof isn't going to fix it. A paint job isn't going to fix it. Both won't fix it. Now, here's the thing. You have every right to stand there at the lot where your house once stood and say, oh my gosh, this is the most horrible thing that's ever happened. And you'd be totally right. And you can call all your friends over and say, look at this. Isn't this the worst thing you've ever seen? And they would all agree. And you really have every right to mourn the loss of your house until your last breath. However, if you choose to rebuild the house, you don't have to, but if you choose to, why in the world would you build the same house, right? There's nothing there. Why not make it bigger, better, more beautiful? That's the opportunity. That's transformation. But it's such a wasted opportunity when you bother to go through all that trauma and rebuild the same house. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think at that point in my life, like it was easier because we weren't married. We didn't have kids, right? We were sort of still in the infancy of life. And okay, you got your whole life ahead of you, right? Versus when the second thing happened, and now it's a little different. And so it was a lot bigger. And I think too, the degree of trust that you have in the person initially also makes the degree of betrayal much bigger than, obviously the more trust, the more the betrayal feels than if there's like, in hindsight, I see all these red flags. Yeah, probably should have known better, right? That's a different thing, maybe a little easier to get over something like that.
Mhm.
So let's go through the healing process of all of
Yeah,
this.
sure. And just to add to what you just said, the way it works with betrayal is the more we trust, the more we depend on someone, the deeper the betrayal. So, for example, a child who's totally dependent on their parent, that's going to have a different impact than your best friend sharing your secret. Your coworker taking credit for your idea. Still a betrayal, different level of cleanup needed because of that level of trust. So absolutely right. Okay. So this is the third discovery. When this one showed up in like the geekiest way, I thought my head was going to fly right off my body. Like this was just amazing. And what was discovered was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome that I shared to that completely rebuilt place of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 proven predictable stages. What's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every stage. And we know what we need to do in order to move from one stage to the next. Healing from betrayal is now completely predictable. Happy to share the stages if you want to hear them.
Yes, please.
Okay, so they're all mapped out in Trust Again. It's what all of our coaches are certified in. It's all we do within the PBT Institute. Here's a boiled down version. Stage 1 is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody, me too, was a heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. If a table only has 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over, right? Shock, stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, Discovery Day. This is by far the scariest of all of the stages. And here's where you get the news. It's like the person takes off that mask and shows you who they've been. And this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're now headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. This doesn't make sense. Like, you can't compute, you can't wrap your mind around what just happened. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, the rules that govern you, that prevent chaos. Trust this person. These are the rules. This is how life works. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, every rule you've ever held to be real and true is no longer. The bottom has completely bottomed out on you, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. This is terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything or anyone you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Who can I trust? Where do I go? How do I feed my kids? Here's the trap though. Stage 3, by far, hands down, is the most common place we get stuck. You and I both know tons of people in this stage right now. Here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, we think it's good. We're like, okay, I got this. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we park here, we plant roots here. We're not supposed to be. We don't know that. And 4 things start to happen. The first thing is you start getting all those small self benefits. Think about it. You get to be right. We like being right. We get someone to blame. We get our story. We love our story. We get a target for our anger. We don't have to do the hard work of learning to trust again. Should I trust you? Can I trust you? I forget it. I'm not trusting anybody. Right. And on some level, we're not getting much else. So that feels good. So we keep that going. We plant deeper roots. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. Now, because this is where we are and we're here a little bit, the mind starts doing things like, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So we question ourselves. So we plant deeper roots. Now, because these are the thoughts we're thinking, well, this is the energy we start putting out. Like energy attracts like energy. So now we start attracting circumstances and people and new relationships to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. This is where I see people sabotaging their healing because they're afraid of outgrowing their betrayer. This is where people join that lame support group, like the Ain't It Awful Club, and they sabotage their growth because now they've found their people, right? It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we're miserable, right? But we have to get through our day. So right here, we start numbing, avoiding, and distracting. So right here, we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, whatever. So we do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say, that emotional eating you're doing, that drinking, that numbing in front of the TV, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. They would say, it happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
100%. Yes. Yep.
That's
Yeah, and honestly, that I work with a lot of people just like that, right? Because they come to me because they want to clean up their nutrition, or they, want to lose weight, or they just don't have energy, or they're, working on their type 2 diabetes. And when we go all the way back, well, why did we get here in the first place? Well, I think it all started. There you go, right? We got to go to the root of why this all started.
exactly. And you think about it, it's like that's why our certification we have doctors and coaches and healers and therapists doing our certification because, like I said, for example, 45% of everyone betrayed has a gut issue. So they can go to the most amazing gut experts on the planet. I'm friends with a lot of them and they're wonderful. But if you don't get to that betrayal that it was at the very root, any gut protocol is only going to take you so far. Right. Same thing with, nutrition. Like even in my own example, when with my own betrayal, I was insulin resistant, borderline diabetic. I don't even eat sugar. That's how chaotic the body becomes with stress. So going into any experience healthy is that much more important because could you only imagine if I was eating some kind of, horrible diet, I would have been a full-blown diabetic. That's the way this works. The good news is you can heal from all of it. And that's what happens in stage 4 and 5. Want me to go through those?
Yeah, let's just and I want to highlight going into it healthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because Sasha, that's what the Be a Better Being podcast is all about. To be the healthiest, happiest version of yourself, build yourself up for that. So then when life throws garbage your way, because it will,
Mm-hmm.
that it causes less harm than if you're not healthy going into it. I will say the only reason I came out of both of those things relatively intact with no real physical, mental, or emotional health issues is because I had long before both of those embraced a healthy lifestyle. Had I not, I can only imagine because I do have tendencies, right, to comfort with food or to over exercise. I would say with the second one, it was all about work because here I am. Well, now I have to because I have to support myself, like, and I'm the only one. So let me just dive into work, 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 work. Leave me alone. I'm fine. I'll talk to my 5 close friends. Nobody else needs to bother me. I'm good. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so work was, and it seemed like a great thing, right? Because look at, I'm building my business, I'm growing my business, I'm getting passion and thriving from that, right? We're just gonna stuff all this other stuff down. I don't have time. Don't have time for that because I gotta work, gotta build my business, gotta pay my bills, right? Gotta restore all the nonsense that just happened that cost me a ton of money. So I'm going to stress it again, listeners. This is why it behooves you to embrace the healthy lifestyle because life is going to throw garbage your way. That is what life is.
And just to add to the health part of this, when let's say you haven't been eating well, exercising, doing, some sort of healthy protocol, when you've been betrayed, and it's a big piece of what we do within the PBT Institute. We do work on the health aspect because think about it. How you eat, how you move, those may be the only things you feel you have control over when the whole bottoms out on you. So it's not about, looking good in your skinny jeans at that point. It's about like, let's get you, out of this place of feeling that life is completely out of your control. Let's get rid of the brain fog. Let's have you thinking more clearly. Let's build up your confidence. I mean, it's all so strategic, but yeah, the health piece is super important. And I would say, everyone, if not almost everyone, their adrenals just absolutely tank. Their immune system is suppressed, accelerated aging. I mean, you name it. And that's what happens. And it's so interesting because as you move into stages 4 and 5, you heal from that gut issue. You look younger, you look better. I mean, it is so classic what we see in stages 4 and 5. So anyway, let me get to those. So this, I don't want to leave anybody hanging.
Yeah.
So if you're willingness is a big word right here, to let go of your story, everything you gain from it, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do. You move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. So you're not healing just yet, but you just stopped the massive damage you've been creating in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, All your stuff's not there. It's not quite cozy yet, but you're like, okay, we can do this. We got this. It feels like that. But what's so interesting is, think about this. If you were to move, you don't take everything with you, right? You don't take those things that don't represent the version of you you're now ready to be in that new space. And what I found was, there is one spot where we leave stage 3 and enter stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you. That lame support group, you don't take them with you. That betrayer who is not changing and you see them clearly, you don't take them with you. So people ask me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. If they don't rise, they don't come. So very common. Anyway, when we've settled in to this new space, we've made it cozy, we've made it sort of mentally home, we move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. We didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. We were surviving. Now we do. The mind is healing. We're making all kinds of new rules, new boundaries, new everything based on the road we just traveled. And we have a new worldview based on everything we see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of that table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
So let's talk about specifically how forgiveness plays a role in all of this, because I know in my own processes, I was like, okay, I forgive. And I did to a certain degree, and I truly thought I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, things started showing up that let me know that, oh, I probably have more work to do.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the role of forgiveness. And I have 2 questions. How do you know when you truly have forgiven someone? And how do you know, like, if you're the one who betrayed someone, how do you know if they have truly forgiven you?
Yeah. Okay. It's a great question. Well, first of all, I love the topic of forgiveness. Clearly, the PBT Institute has founded National Forgiveness Day, which is September 1st every year. And we're just honored and thrilled about that. Forgiveness is just a word until you do it, and it is a practice. This is not a one and done. And I know even in my own experience, I was like, okay, I'll just forgive, thinking it was going to be one of these like, ta-da moments. No, it doesn't work like that. You forgive over and over and over again. And it takes time, because the way you feel comfortable forgiving, let's say you're rebuilding with someone, and I'll talk about, when you're not, but let's just say you are. In order for you to feel safe and valued and comfortable, you need to see a completely different expression of that person. You need to see they're taking time and effort, and there's remorse and apology and regret and all those things. So it takes time to fully see it, trust it, believe it, that it's real. So it takes time. And I as it relates to rebuilding with someone, and we know, listen, forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with us. We're releasing the power that the pain has over us. And I remember doing the study, reading a ton of other studies, and one was about forgiveness, and it was saying that if we feel safe and valued and we forgive, we feel better. If we do not feel safe and valued and we forgive, we feel worse. And it backfires every time. And in trust again, I mentioned that study, but I upped it a little bit. And I said, okay, take out the word forgive and exchange it for rebuild or reconcile. If you feel safe and valued and you reconcile, you feel better. If you do not feel safe and valued and you reconcile, you feel worse. So huge distinction right there. You want to know why you're forgiving. Are you forgiving just because you're like, this is too painful, I'm just over it, right? That's not real. That's not going to last. And you haven't forgiven if you're like, no, I'm good as long as I don't see that person. No, that's not forgiving, right? Forgiving is truly all about you. And the way, I see it every day with our members. We see this sort of trajectory where at first it's deep sadness. Like, how can you do this to me? And then that turns into anger. Like, how can you do this to me? And then if you keep going, this is going to sound a little weird, but it turns into almost like a pity. Like, really? Like, that's what you have to do? And then if you keep going, it turns into compassion. Like, I get it. We're good. You see, and that's when you're free. And forgive.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have, within the 5 stages, forgiveness has a crucial role but certainly not in the very beginning. We're not ready for it. We're just not. I mean, maybe acceptance earlier on, but not forgiveness. That comes later. To get to your question about the betrayer or the person who's seeking forgiveness, shame is one of the most physically destructive emotions we can have. It does nothing for you or for the person or people you've hurt. So the whole idea is, how do you heal shame? You bring light to it. You bring honor to it. You do something about it, right? So if you're the betrayer, if you hurt anybody in any kind of way, own it. Take full and complete responsibility for who you were at the time and those actions, right? That's a step towards benefiting the other person. Now, who knows if the person on the other end is going to accept it? Who knows if they're around, alive? We don't even know. But then if that's not the case, forgive yourself so that you could do right by other people in the future. Withholding forgiveness for yourself doesn't help you or anyone. So the damage is done. Right the wrong by cleaning yourself up first and then paying it forward in whatever way you can.
I love that. The way you describe the trajectory of the forgiveness process 100% aligns with my experience. So as somebody who's gone through it and truly know that I have forgiven, it's easy now to go back and see that, oh yeah, you were in the process. But I think that's what we do, right? We think it's like a one-step thing. And in our minds, we would like it to be that because we like things to just wrap up, move on, right? We don't like the process of anything. We just want the result. And you got to go through the process. You have to be willing to go through the process. You have to do the hard work in the process. And I think also let go of the idea of the outcome because you're not in control of the outcome, right? You're not in control. Whatever that person is going to do has zero relevance to your process through all of this. But again, human nature is we want them to ask for our forgiveness. We want them to acknowledge their fault in it, their side of it, right? And because we want to be right, we want to be validated. That feels really good. And yet not everybody's going to get that. I'm very fortunate in both of my situations. I got that from both of them. Now, we didn't end, neither one of those relationships ended up together for a whole bunch of other reasons. But I will say that getting that definitely, I think, accelerated my forgiveness trajectory because it is a little easier to do it when there has been acknowledgement. And yet, there's acknowledgement and then maybe we go on and do something else that you're like, oh yeah, you're actually still the same person. You know what? I'm going to worry about me, do me, because I'm forgiving and healing me. Whatever happens with you, it's not my job.
And you're lucky because that's not many people do not have that experience. Yeah. They're constantly banging their head against the wall, trying to get that person to see and understand and validate and believe in whatever. And you're absolutely, for anybody hearing this, if that's your experience, you are absolutely wasting your time because at this point in that person, those people's journeys, they're incapable or unwilling. You know what? I'm going to teach you a little something. You will never forget this. This is something that has helped so many of our members within the PBT Institute. I call it the window of willingness. How do you know if it's safe and in your best interest to heal and rebuild or heal yourself and move along? Here's one way of knowing. Imagine a window, and the window is the widest open, representing the best case scenario to heal and rebuild. If you choose, you don't have to. But level one would be the window is the widest open and it's remorse, it's apology, it's regret, it's owning it, taking full and complete responsibility. It would sound something like this. I am so sorry for what I did. I can't imagine the hurt I caused you. What in the world can I do to make it right? Right now with betrayal, it's going to take a whole lot more than that, but you're off to a great start. You can feel the window closing with level two. And you know it's coming when you hear the word because. Here's an excuse. Well, I did it because, blah, blah, blah. I said it because, right? Now, you still may be willing to listen, but if you notice, it doesn't feel as good as that complete and total responsibility. You could feel the window closing even more with level three. You know it's coming when you hear the word you. This is blame. Well, I did it because you. I said it because you. I call this the two-sided slap. Here you get betrayed on one hand. That's the slap on the first side. And then you get blamed for it. This is crazy making. This is gaslighting. This is narcissism. This is all that stuff. The kiss of death is if you believe it. That's when you're done. That's when you're done. And this is why people slowly, they stay in these situations because they believe it's them. It's a mess. It gets, you could feel level 3 and level 4, close cousins. You know you're at level 4 when there is zero responsibility. That person is taking no responsibility for their actions. It sounds like this. I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. You really need some help. Level 3, level 4, it's like usually they go together. So with level 1 and level 2, if you want to rebuild, you have something to work with if you want to. Level 3 and level 4, heal yourself and move along. At this point in this person's consciousness, they are incapable or unwilling. You have to know who you're working with right here. So that's hopefully a clear way to tell.
That is really helpful. And I would like to wrap this up with just how, when somebody is genuinely willing to forgive, they are recognizing this is not me hanging on to this guilt, this anger, this grudge, this whatever, this hurt, this pain is not helping me. And I know the only way for me to get better is to forgive. But man, is that hard. So can you maybe walk through a couple of steps of how someone can go about the process of forgiving once they recognize that, okay, this is actually what it's going to take?
Yeah, you move through the 5 stages of betrayal to breakthrough. I mean, that's really it. Because when you're in stages 4 and stage 5, you see things so differently. You're recreating a version of you that never would have had the opportunity to exist had it not happened. So in that higher vantage point, you just have a view of things you never had access to. There's a level of strength, a level of confidence, a level of clarity, and it just shows up there. So also, in stages 4 and stage 5, we see it all the time. New businesses, new passion projects, new relationships, new levels of health. And it's all that transformation that happens. So the best suggestion I could give is just move through the 5 stages, because you'll be in that position to forgive. I'm not saying forgive and rebuild, because that may not be what you want, or it may not be an option, but you will be able to forgive because of the growth that you've experienced.
And as somebody who's done this, I will tell you that forgiveness is one of the most liberating things you can do for yourself. I just had an experience very
Yeah.
recently where, there was a little interaction with a little so and so, and then it kind of all disappeared. And all my friends were like, oh my God, he's such a jerk. Oh my God, what? I'm like, no, I think he's great. He gave me like 5 days, 5 experiences of super fun, good stuff. And he's not a jerk. He's doing whatever he needs to do. I guarantee you, I would never have that perspective on somebody had I not gone through all of this other yucky, messy stuff and learn to see things differently, learn to see it from a different vantage point. And so just when you do, right, I would never voluntarily sign up for the stuff I went through, but I went through it. So what am I going to do? I can only do me. And I do look back at it all with gratitude that it allowed me to grow into who I am, to have perspectives on things that really do free me. Because if I take this new experience, I'm like, oh my God, you're right. He is a jerk. He is a this. He is a that. All that is yucky, dark, ugly energy that I am choosing to infiltrate myself with.
Exactly.
Well, how is that a joyful life? How is that useful of my time and energy? It's not. So trust me, everybody, when I say forgiveness is one of the hardest things to do. And yet when you do it, your life does change. It just naturally changes because you are a different person once you've learned and gone through the forgiveness process than before you've done it. Sasha, anything before we sign off with Dr. Debi?
Yeah, I mean, just going through all of this is so incredibly helpful. I took notes during this entire thing as if I was in psych class back in college. It's like what it reminded me. I was like, better get my pen and paper. But for those of you who do listen in order, you know that I experienced a lot the last two years. It was very vague, but I will say betrayal was probably the number one thing that I experienced. And for me, when you're going through the list of 5, I do finally see myself at number 4, which is very beautiful for myself. I admire my growth. I acknowledge myself, and I'm proud of myself for the growth and the healing that I'm doing. But what I will say is that number 3, you guys, where it's that survival mode, just like Michelle said, it's so dark. And if you hold on to that energy and you're not willing to keep going through that ick, it will manifest into something. That energy has to go somewhere. That darkness will make you sick. And for me, I don't want to be sick. I don't want to hold on to any of that hard, I almost want to say cancerous energy. And it's worth it. It's worth doing the hard work. Like Michelle says, hard now or hard later. And I felt myself physically, and I saw myself physically age while I was holding on to all of that grossness and all of that energy of betrayal. And I am in a place where I do want to forgive, whether or not I ever have that person be in front of me where we have a conversation. That doesn't matter. But what does matter is that I acknowledge it, and I take this energy and I move forward with it in a healthy manner. And I don't ever want to be that blame placer. I want to be the health chaser, if that makes sense.
I love that. That's beautiful. Dr. Debi, I'm going to let you wrap us up. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think would be super helpful?
I would just say I didn't do anything anybody else couldn't do, and there's a roadmap for it now. If you've been through the worst of it already, you owe it to yourself to experience the transformation that's waiting for everybody in stages 4 and 5.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you for doing all that work and making the roadmap. And we're going to put all of your links in the show notes, links to your TED Talks, to your Transformation Institute, everything. This has been exactly what I wanted it and what I knew it would be. So thank you so much for sharing your time with our audience. And everybody, now you get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.